Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. My name is Adam Kurtz, and I've been with Sylvan for a long time. I'll be stepping you through the webinar today, which is basically what we'll be covering today is going through some charting. And we're going to talk a little bit about some, basically some simple charts that will get you kind of up and running, get you going, and really kind of gearing these things around using these charts within the views and then extending them into the new dashboarding capabilities that viewer is going to provide. So some exciting new technology today, and we're going to talk about some of the ways that, well, basically how do you build a chart in viewer. And I'm not sure if many of you have spent some time doing that, but that's kind of what we're going to be covering today. So let's kind of get into it. And so I'm going to open up a couple of my views here. Actually, what we're looking at is the latest version of Viewer. This is version 7.1. And if you notice, there's a favorite and recently used views here that makes things kind of easy to get to. If you notice, I've been doing some work here on some of the charting capabilities. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a pretty basic view. This view, as you can see, is this year versus last in nature, and starts at the product category level. So my purpose here is to go ahead and build a this year, last year type graph that I can incorporate into my dashboard. So when you build the view, obviously you just want to include the dimensions that you want to include within the graph, because what we'll eventually do is end up hiding this data grid. So as you can see, the view is pretty basic. I've got product category and its description, this year and last year's sales, and so it's pretty basic. And I've got one drill down from product category to product family. So keeping things pretty basic here. If you notice then in the view menu up here in the icons, you can hover over these and they will tell you what they mean. And I'm running the latest version. As you can see, the help hover text, or some people call it bubble text, is very helpful, which really kind of guides you through as you hover over these different icons. The charting icon looks like a chart appropriately enough, and if I click on it, it's going to bring up the wizard for the chart. I can drag and drop that over here so that I can kind of still look at my view and work, while the view is visible. The different types of charts are available in the first drop-down, and there's many different types of charts that are available here. And I'm going to start out with a column chart. Now, given that my view is so simple here, I could go ahead and just finish out here if I wanted to. I can keep everything dynamic, and that is I want to graph everything. If I hit next, again, I don't really need to do anything. I can keep everything dynamic if I want to see my first chart and how it's going to look. So you have this concept of, the series that you want to base the chart on, and then the flip side or the other side of the axis would be your data point. And you can make the row or your columns the series, and then obviously whatever you make your series, the other axes would be your data points. Try to keep things real simple here, and then finally the third page allows you to give the chart a title. By default, it takes on the view name, and you certainly can change that. Maybe I want to say this year versus last year sales. I can title the X and Y axis if I wanted to, and we'll get into some of this formatting later. Bottom line is I don't have to do much to create a chart. Just right out of the gates, this is what I get. Now, is it what you want? I don't know. I mean, personally, for me, no. This is not something I would use. I would want these, I would probably want to reverse my data series and data points so I can see them compared side by side. Because right now we're looking at the group of the different product families for 17 and then all grouped together, and then 16 all grouped together. Not, in my opinion, not the best looking graph. So how do we change it? How do we adjust it? Whenever you create a graph, well, you can do a couple things. I could right-click and delete it and start over. If I right-click anywhere in a graph area, it's going to allow me to delete the chart. So that's one thing. If I right-click in the chart area itself, I can bring up the data wizard again, which is basically the same thing we just went through. So again, by just coming over and right-clicking on the actual chart area here within the actual chart grid, then I can bring up that data wizard again and really kind of go through the wizard once more to kind of get what I want, right? So in this case, I want to keep my chart type column the same. I'm going to change my series to my columns. And really, I'm just going to finish out because at the end of the day, it's going to flip the, my rows into the data point, and it's going to show my chart as such. And this is what I'm looking for. So whatever you make your series, one little tip on that, whatever you make your series is going to end up in your legend. Okay. This is looking better. This is not quite ready for prime time yet, but a few things I can do here. Maybe if I right-click on the chart title, I could format the title. So maybe I want to make it, I can give it some effects here. I can go to the font and I can make it larger so it kind of sticks out a little bit better. Maybe I can make it bold. I can make it a different color if I wanted to. And so now I've got this concept of, the actual title looking different this year versus last year's sales. So in this case, I can also go in and format that title and do the background. And maybe select a color that I want to choose for the background. Do I want a border for the title? I can pick a border, solid line border, 2-point, and I can choose a color for that too. And I'll just choose black. So let's see what it looks like now. So now I've got the chart available here. I've got the title, which looks a little bit better. If I right-click and format the legend, so again, I can just come over here and right-click on the legend itself. Notice how the right-click menu is contextual, so it knows where I am. And my first option there would be for the legend. I'd like to see it, the top would be fine. I'd actually like to see a center. It might look a lot better if we center the legend. Let's take a look at that. That looks pretty decent. Maybe we can do it side by side, perhaps. I don't know if I can, let's see if I can do that. I don't know if I can. I'll have to look into that, but nevertheless, that looks pretty decent. One other thing I can do here is that's pretty simple. Instead of the numbers, maybe I want the descriptions in there instead. So now how would I approach that? Well, a couple ways. I could right-click on product category here and go to properties, and I can use my display text. If I do that, what will happen is I say, well, I don't really want to see the value there. I want to see the actual description. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that, and we'll see what we get. Basically, it's exactly what we want. So now, as you can see, I was able to tell viewer, instead of retrieving the value or the code, use the description instead. And then, as you can see, this field here becomes a little, basically becomes redundant, but it doesn't matter. We're going to end up hiding the data grid anyway. So we'll just leave it be. Now, let's kind of stretch this graph out a little bit more. how would we do that? Well, again, right-click, right-click, right-click. So if I right-click on my graph, then I can format my chart area. And that's where you're going to go to stretch this guy out. So my width, I'm going to take that out to about, now again, remember, I want to leave room for other things in my dashboard. So I don't want to stretch this out too much because, again, depending on the layout of the dashboard and what you're going for, it's really it's going to depend on how you do this. But as you can see, it basically stretches out the graph. This is actually looking really good. So here we have a pretty good graph here that I'm probably going to want to use for my dashboard. Also, that's actually drillable too, so I can drill within the graph. And why is that? Well, I made the data series, given the fact that my data series is based on the columns, it kind of opened up the data points to be drilled upon. Now, how do I hide the data grid? Let's go in here and let's see, I should be able to hide it here. Doesn't look like I can, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the View Explorer. The View Explorer. So basically, this guy, if you haven't messed around with the View Explorer much, it essentially gives you an option to do a lot of things. But one of those things is to hide the data grid itself. So if I come to the grid folder, I can collapse that down, and I can see that my grid is right here. And notice that my properties is down here, and I've got a Show Grid option here. And I can select that and trick it over to No. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and now I've got my chart. That's basically ready to go into my dashboard. Now I'm going to go ahead and save that. So next time I run this view, obviously it's going to remember that my data grid is hidden, and that it's going to obviously just going to retrieve the chart. So how do we incorporate this into the dashboard? With the new dashboard capability, there'll be a different URL for the administrative dashboard designer. And here I can add in a new dashboard. You can give it a name, whatever you want to name it. Obviously, you'd probably want to name it something better than that, but I can edit that and rename it as needed. So now I want to go into an edit mode here to edit the actual dashboard itself. Now, notice that when I go into my edit mode, it then retrieves the views, all the different view groups that are available within the viewer environment. And here under the favorites are my different views that are available. And my simple charting, this is the one I just did. And we'll drag and drop that over here. And we'll expand it out a little bit more so we can actually see the chart. So one thing I would recommend is we probably need to shrink it down a little bit more. But before I do that, let me go ahead and do a couple things. Once I drag my view into the dashboard designer, I can then I can kind of start designing a little bit by coming into my settings. So each view will have this opportunity to go in and refine it further by going into my settings. I can hide a lot of things here. I can hide the view filter. I can hide the actual image if I was using one. The toolbar can be hidden. Maybe I want to do that. That'll buy me a little more room. And so you can hide certain things here so that it, it looks a little bit better. Maybe I want to hide a navigational bar as well. So I can hide these things and really kind of clean this up quite a bit. Right? So now I've got all these things hidden here. I could get rid of that navigational bar. I guess that I would use my View Explorer to do that. And I could come in and I could get rid of the navigational bar. Well, I believe that's a setting in my toolbar. So we'll do that in a second. So I can get out of the stop editing mode, and here we can see that this is kind of what it looks like. So I can go back into edit, shrink this down a little bit more. Maybe skinny this down a little bit more, like as such. So what I'll end up doing is I'll probably end up shrinking this graph down just a tiny bit so it fits a little bit better than this. But that's the beginning of my dashboard. You know, how would I shrink this guy down? I would come back in here, go back to my chart area, and bring this down a little bit further. Let's see what this would look like. So that shrinks that down quite a bit. And another thing, if I want to get rid of my navigational area here, I can do that too. I believe that's done here in display settings. And gosh, I don't see that. I'll have to look that up and see if we can get rid of that navigational area. One other thing you can do is format the axes. So notice that I can come down here where these titles are, these descriptions, and I can format the axes, and it would be obviously the primary horizontal axes. So you got a lot of things to play around with here. I want to keep things fairly simple here, but I can come in and for my labels here, I can angle it maybe 45 degrees, and you know, it would look a little bit better than that, you know. So that way you're not, you know, wrapping the text. So that might be something that looks a little bit better. So I come back to my dashboard, and as I click on refresh my new dashboard here, and go back in there, we can see that we've shrunk it down a little bit, so we can come back here and size this in a little bit better. Right, so we'll take this and skinny this down a little bit more. And there you have your first portion of that. So that's your bar chart. Maybe we can get something a little bit different and show some trends. So in order to do that, you might have a view out there that uses time as a dimension. So here's one way you could do this. Whereas I'm using time now as a dimension. And now my view is at a little bit higher level. Maybe this is something for the executives where you can see how the different divisions are trending for the current year. So maybe I want a simple line chart here to show that and to show the trend of the sales for each division. All right, so basically I come back up to my add chart wizard, bring that up. And in this case, I'm going to choose a line chart. And we're going to keep the series on rows, and we're going to finish this out and see what it looks like. And there it is. Wasn't that simple? So, you know, some of the stuff's really, really easy. Just trying it, keeping things rather simple. As you can see, we're able to really kind of, you know, get some pretty simple things created that are quite easy. And again, I can come back in here and format the chart area. I might want to stretch this out a little bit, you know, maybe something along the lines of 600 by 600. I can, again, play the same games with my title and you know, make it a little bit more visible. Of course, I could change the name. Maybe I want to format the title and have it say division, year-to-date sales trend. Keep it kind of generic. All right, looking pretty good. Let's come down to here. Let's see. The measure names are a little actual sales amount. Maybe if we can come in here and change that to say just amount or revenue or whatever might look better, you know. To clean that up a little bit more, right? And I could play the same games here with that axis, right? Maybe I come back in here and go back into that label, and I tilt that for 45 degree. Yeah, that's looking really good. All right, well, let's hide the grid on this one. So as you can see, and this is drillable as well, but you know, given the fact that it's not on, that you can drill in on the legend and notice how it'll drill you to the next level. So you could, if you wanted to, keep the data grid up here. You know, that's another thing is that you could have something like this as part of your dashboard as well. You don't necessarily have to be all graphical per se, but and we'll play with that. We'll play a little bit with that. So let's go up here, hide the grid. In this case, I'm just right-clicking on that grid folder and hiding that grid, and I'm going to save that. Okay. So now I've got another view that I can bring into my dashboard. And let's go ahead and bring that guy in. So we're going to edit my dashboard once again. We are going to go into my favorites, and we'll bring in the simple charting, and we'll put that over here. Okay, so now we've got this guy. We could stretch him out a little bit more. Right? And shrink him a little bit more. You could stack them if you wanted to. And everything's drag and droppable. Right? So it looks pretty decent. Right? And we could play the same games here. Come in here. We want to hide everything. Oh, there's the navigational panel. My gosh. We'll hide that away. And the toolbar. Looking pretty decent. Let's go ahead and hide this navigational panel as well. There it is. Okay. All right. So now we've got the makings of two different areas of the dashboard. Pretty simple graphs that we were able to put together using the bar chart and our line graph as well. Let's keep it going. So what other type of graph can we introduce into the dashboard? Well, another simple graph that you can put together that I like a lot, and you can drill on it, and it's kind of cool, is the pie chart. So in this case, again, coming into this particular view only has one column of data. I've got my year-to-date sales by product category. And so if I come in here and make this available, come in and select my chart type, and we are going to go ahead and choose pie. Now, I could go ahead and finish out here, but I know that typically on a pie, you're going to want to automatically make that column the series. And what we know now, you know, that's pretty much the case. If I finish out here, my pie chart is created. So as you can see, you don't have to screw around too much with the settings in the wizard. You can just finish out and kind of, you know, make up the different refinements as you go here. Again, formatting my text, year-to-date sales pie, and again, kind of highlighting the chart area, making it bold and beautiful. Same thing we want to do with the display options here. We want to go ahead and turn that on so that we see those, right? And then let's go ahead and hide the grid. Right-click on the grid. So again, coming into your View Explorer, right? That's that little button there. And that brings up your View Explorer. And there's my folder for my grid. I will right-click and hide that. We're going to apply that. And then here's my pie chart. I'm going to go ahead and save that. All right, let's go into our dashboard and bring in the pie chart. So going back into edit mode, going into my favorites. And there's my final one. Okay, probably need to scroll down here. Give it a little bit of room. And we'll introduce the pie, and maybe I could put that right in the middle. Right? Something along those lines. Get a little more room. And make all the same options available here too. Hide everything. One drill through option here, you could also put in a URL to drill to another view. So that's available as well. All right, we're going to stop editing mode, and we're going to take a look at our dashboard. Looking pretty good. This particular, this button here actually takes you to the view. So if I click on that, it actually runs the view. And that'll be available within the dashboard as well. Let's see. Going back into edit mode, just one final thing here. Yep, looking pretty good. I think we're ready to go. So now let's incorporate the dashboard into Viewer. So how do we make this available? Looks pretty decent. And so now we want to make it available within Viewer itself. So how would we do that? Well, if I come back over here, this is ready to go. If I right-click it, I can open it in a new tab. And that would then expose the URL, which I could copy. And what that does is allows me to do a couple things. I can come into the Viewer application, and I can make it the global home page. So in doing so, I can come in here, paste that in, click on Save. So now when I come home, it's actually, it now becomes my home page. Fully drillable. That probably should not have happened. Let's check the pie chart, make sure that that works. This is kind of new technology, so it might have a few issues, but we'll get those cleaned up. Let's try the pie chart. Looks like I can drill in on beef, and looks like we have the same problem there. So let's take a look at that. These will be drillable. They should be drillable. So I apologize for not being able to show that, but certainly, within the view itself, you'll be able to drill in on it. Let's take a look at how that would behave here. We can drill in on the legend, and it will then show me the product family, which is the next level down here. So if I go into fresh vegetables, I could see the split of the two different product families for fresh vegetable. So that's really what you would see in a dashboard. I'll show the development department that, and we'll see if we can clean that up. But other than that, pretty simple. I mean, I love the design tool, the drag and drop, and then being able to publish it out. like I said, you can publish it out to the application level. So here I've got the global homepage. So every user would hit that, would actually see it when they come into Viewer. I'm just taking it back to nothing. Another thing is you could create a user link. So here I've got a user link, and I could come in here and create the user link. And all a user link is a link to another URL, another website, to a file. It could be anything that you could link to via URL or some sort of UNC path. Here I can give it, just tell it to save it away to my favorites, and we'll do that. Right. So now I've got a link in here called New Dashboard, and that's how I can get to it as well. So that's one way to get to it. Is I can come in here and it will take me into the dashboard in a separate page. Would be one way to do that. Another thing is that you could turn that off so that it doesn't open up a new window for the link. And I've got dashboard spelled incorrectly. Okay. So now it won't. So now when I click on the link, it'll just stay within the product. It won't go into another instance of browser. And there it goes. Pretty sure that there's a way to get rid of these titles as well. I don't, at this point, I'm not sure exactly where that would be, but I will, I can follow up, and if you're interested. Certainly, if you're interested in this is not something you pay for extra. This is something that is part of your maintenance.